Welcome to beautiful and sunny Costa del Sol, and today let's talk about something that's a bit more serious, and that is the cost of living. I made a video about this a while ago, but I think we need a few updates, and today I will also tell you exactly how much I think you need at least in order to survive, and give you an example of how much you need living in a shared accommodation space versus living alone. Alright, let's get started. So obviously for most people, the biggest expense they're gonna have is housing. And the housing market here on the Costa del Sol is getting increasingly complicated, as a lot of apartments are reserved at least part of the year for Airbnb or short-term rental, which makes it kind of difficult to find a permanent rental, in the sense that it's hard to find a place that will let you rent the place for a one-year contract, for example. If you're okay with having a contract that goes from, for example, September until the end of June, you're fine, but if you want a more permanent contract, if you want an actual 12-month contract, that can be a bit more difficult to find. If you prefer to live alone, the cheapest option is usually a studio, and the studios start from around 600 euros per month. On top of that, you have things like utilities and internet, but even finding a studio for 600 can be difficult these days. If you don't mind sharing a house or an apartment with other people, you can find shared accommodation starting from around 300 euros, but if you want to be in a central location, that is also going to be difficult. Now, it's worth noting that you may be able to find cheaper options in this, but it will usually require you to go live somewhere either pretty far inland or a little bit in the middle of nowhere. So what I'm talking about here are the prices for the coastal areas, so Malaga and the Costa del Sol. In terms of groceries, because unfortunately inflation has also hit the grocery market. So for groceries, I'd say you need at least 250 euros per person per month in order to survive, and that is if you only buy the sort of bare essentials and go to the cheaper supermarkets. Now we've covered the most basics. You need a place to live, you need some food to eat, but something else that a lot of people will also have to pay for, at least eventually or at some point, is either some form of medicine and or dental. So dental is not covered by insurance here, whether you have a private insurance or not. I mean, you can get dental insurances, but let's just forget about those for a moment. And dental procedures here can be quite pricey, and the same goes for medicine. Even if you have a prescription from your doctor for medicine, it is not free, so you will still have to calculate that in your budget. For dental, as an example, if you have maybe a simple cavity, you can probably get that fixed for around 50 euros, but if you have something more complicated like a root canal, you're probably looking more towards 600 to 800 euros. If you have a car, you need to know that it can be quite difficult to find parking, especially in the high season months. Of course, it depends on where you live, but if you opt to live in a central location, you may have to actually pay for a parking space if you want to be guaranteed having a place to park your car. On top of that, you also need to pay car insurance, which for a affordable standard car, if you don't have a bad insurance history, you can probably get from around 250 euros per year. If you don't have a car, which you in many places don't actually need here, that's one of the nice things about living in the Costa del Sol area, because the public transportation generally works well, and tickets start from around 1.5 euros. So if you have a budget of 30 to 50 euros per month for public transportation, you can get pretty far within the area. You probably also need a phone plan and an internet plan of sorts. This is actually quite affordable if you shop around. I pay around 30 euros for a phone plan and an internet plan, and it works great. If you want to go to a gym, it depends obviously a lot on the quality of the gym, but if you pay somewhere in between 20 to 30 euros, you can get a pretty decent gym in most areas. So this video is not really focused on kids, but in case you have kids, you of course need to know that the public schools in general are free, but if you opt to put your kid in a private school, it gets a lot more expensive, where some schools cost up to 10 to 15,000 euros per year per child, and childcare is also not free. So now let's talk a little bit about how much do you need at least in order to survive. Here we're not talking about in order to live well, but how much do you need in order to get by? What is the absolute minimum? I'd say you need at least 1,000 euros in order to cover your basic needs. If you live alone, that is around 600 euros for a studio. Then you need to add a little bit in utilities. Then you need your groceries. Then of course, if you have some medical expenses and dental expenses, you probably also need a phone and internet, and probably also transportation of sorts. And if you add this all together, you do need at least 1,000 euros just in order to survive. So that is survival, not having any fun and not accounting for any unforeseen expenses. It is true that the south of Spain in general is more affordable than many other places in Western and Central Europe. However, one thing that is becoming increasingly expensive here is housing, essentially because of the Airbnb bubble. Now, the best thing you can do if you want to save money on housing is, as we already talked about, to share housing with other people, whether that's with your partner or friends. You can also consider moving further inland because in general, the further away you are from the coast, the more affordable the housing, with some exceptions, such as very popular white villages. On the other hand, if you do manage to sort your housing situation and if you only rely on public transportation, yeah, it can be a pretty affordable place to live. For example, something like going out to eat doesn't have to cost a lot. You can get pretty far with 25 euros, having a meal with a few courses. But if you want to live a good life here, I would recommend to have at least 1,500 euros to spend. I think this is a good starting point. With that, you can have some fun and also you can budget for some unforeseen expenses. I'm curious to know if you guys think that this is an affordable place to live or not, so don't hesitate to leave a comment. If you want to help me grow this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button. Alright, thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video. Bye!